Welcome to The World Today. I'm Waqas Majeed Khan. Today we are discussing three important topics. The first one is about terrorism, and Pakistan's position in the Global Terrorism Index has come down to the 5th position, which is good news all around, but still we feel that there is a long way to go for us to eliminate this menace from our soil completely, and that is the stated objective of every political party as well as the governments. We hope that this goal is achieved sooner rather than later, and everybody is working hard towards achieving this ideal situation. Our second topic, unfortunately, is again connected with terrorism, and that is the 15 bullet-riddled bodies that were found in Baluchistan's Sketch district. We'll talk about the ramifications of this, and obviously the fight against terror is still ongoing, and a sad and grim reminder that it's not over yet, and we hope that we are able to overcome this menace as soon as possible. Our third topic is regarding a story that was published yesterday in a very renowned newspaper, and that was about South Waziristan, some Taliban-style curbs being slapped on people in Vana, and that was contested by the local administration, so we'll talk a bit about that as well. Let's get the conversation started. I'd like to introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me today, we have Mohammed Sheraz, who's an academic and been on our show many times. And along with him, we have Brigadier Samson Sharaf, who is a columnist for The Nation newspaper. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. Sheraz, I'd like to start with you. Very noticeable decline in terrorist activities in Pakistan. Even globally, we've seen that there has been a decline in terrorism, but for Pakistan, it's much more significant because earlier on we had reached up to the number 2 spot, and that was comparing us to countries where there is war going on, and still we were at number 2 in terms of terrorism. But now we've come down to the 5th spot. Still a long way to go, in your opinion. What do you think? Would you attribute the reasons to this decline to?
Well, Waqas, I would say commitment shown by the Pakistani government and the security forces, plus the nation itself, was in favor of getting rid of this menace of terrorism. Obviously, certain operations were taken place, and we were committed to the fact that we want to make sure that physically we are able to dismember this network within our territory, which we successfully did. And this was something which was achieved gradually, this time around it is 12% decrease in the terrorist-related activities and terrorist-related deaths as well. So in other words, I would attribute this decline to the kind of activity, to the kind of change of our own posture towards our own future, in other words, because as I've mentioned in many previous programs as well, that this is the first time that Pakistan has placed national interest within its own territory. We are now more concerned about whatever takes place within Pakistan, and in the 21st century, I would say this is the approach forward, because the international politics has evolved into something where domestic stability, domestic politics have become more important as compared to the foreign politics. Why I say that, why it's more important? Because the domestic politics is something which is shaping your external behaviors now. Now, just having strong armed forces or having nuclear weapons is not the answer to the challenges which are faced by countries in the 21st century, the challenges such as terrorism itself, So that's why I think the change of approach, the change of how we see things basically has bring about a realization that we need to take preemptive measures in order to achieve the kind of goals which we are a part of now, the kind of regional integration, regional economic integration which is taking place in the region, and obviously the role of China for being there in a way as an anchor to motivate us that yes, this challenge can be met, because otherwise earlier what we have seen, the world's best military, the world's best military might has not been able to produce such results in Afghanistan, So that is very important, that we have learned the lesson how to move ahead in this regard. And yes, as you have mentioned, that this is one step. it is a long way to go, because then again terrorism is not just Pakistan's problem, and obviously there is a declining trend globally as well, as you have
And
mentioned.
also it doesn't necessarily just have a military solution. There are many other things that need to be accompanied along with the
Waqas,
military solution.
interestingly, terrorism itself is a political problem. You
Absolutely.
cannot just resolve it through security measures, through hard means.
Right.
Without soft means, I think...
Without changing the mindset which breeds terrorism,
exactly.
that
So
is
it is
the real
30% of the war.
cause.
It is 30% of the war which has been won at the moment.
Right.
So that is...
We still have 70%.
We have to maintain that. In order to maintain that, we need to work on intangible ways more. The
Well,
war
let's
of narratives.
move forward with that and ask Brigadier Saab's opinion. Sir, in your opinion, do you think that the National Action Plan has played a role in curbing the terrorist activities in Pakistan? How far do you think it's been successful?
I think it's been very, very partially successful. The 30% that he has said, out of the 100%, which means 70% is still left. And that 70% is related to our psychosocial and socioeconomic situation. And basically it's a sociology problem. Terrorism stems out of sociology. So that has not been resolved in Pakistan. And that is why Pakistan is now down to number 5. Had it been done in the past 4 years, where military and law enforcement agencies had intensified operations, we could have well been out of the bracket of top 10 countries of terrorism. The National Action Plan is based on a 20 points agenda, which is more of an MOU or something. It has not been followed up with any counter-terrorism policy at all. It's something that I have been stressing for the past 5 years in my talk shows and my columns, but no one has paid heed. We needed a nexus between the judiciary, the law enforcement agencies. We needed to make somebody the surrogate of public interest in all these operations.
Of course, our judicial reform program was also part of the National Action Plan, which wasn't
not
put
happened.
in.
You see, if you see the national security and the counter-terrorism plans of UK and United States of America, and by the way, they failed in Afghanistan very badly, and they've not done well in Syria or Iraq or Libya either. Still, we've been much more successful. But in their plans, everything is integrated. They're political surrogates of the people. They're judicial surrogates of the people. In this case, it is not so. By and large, the law enforcement agencies have been able to carry out intense operations with lot of impetus and momentum in the unruly areas of FATA and other places. There's another area which is being neglected, that is Karachi to Baluchistan. If you draw a imaginary line from Karachi to Quetta and everything which is on Iran side, this was an area which was brimming with terrorism. And Karachi had become actually a hub of terrorism. There was lawlessness, there was a political party with a militant wing known, now disowned by its people. We had the Liari gangs, we had Desire, Baloch and other, and there were so many others who were linked. And there were about 10, 15 hostile intelligence agencies who were funding all these people. So a very intense operation was carried out in Karachi and also some parts of Baluchistan. And that is how they've been able to taper it down to this level. But unfortunately, throughout this war on terrorism, I'm referring to the past 4 years now, political expediencies, they have been an impediment. They've been hampering the pace of these operations. Even very recently, you see a top federal government official saying that why were Rangers pressurizing a certain party to disown their founder? You know, it's a security concern. It was very much a law and order issue, not only in Karachi, but in Sindh and also in Baluchistan. All these are interconnected. So this insensitivity for the security of the country at the cost of political expediencies, it doesn't gel well. Pakistan could have done much better. And remember, there are over 7,000 men and women lost from the law enforcement agencies, primarily Pakistan Army, followed by Frontier Corps.
Right.
And Pakistan Police.
So Pakistan has actually...
There's a big sacrifice behind it.
Absolutely, sir. Now, if we look at the sacrifices that we have made and the gains that we have made, against those sacrifices, do you think it justifies the amount of blood that has been spilled of our security forces and our civilians and the results that we've been able to achieve after all that sacrifice? Or do we still need to sacrifice more, in your opinion, Sheraz? Or do you think that the time for sacrificing is over and now we need to rebuild on the sacrifices that we've already made and move forward and be forward-looking towards resolving this issue? And as we spoke earlier, finding a political and social solution to this basic problem.
Waqas, I think enough is enough. We have sacrificed, we have been sacrificing because directly or indirectly because of the certain policies, because of certain, I think...
Brigadier Sir was talking about political expediencies, but can you have, is there any way around them? Because obviously those decisions were, as they say, taken with a half-hearted, in a half-hearted way.
I think the problem with Pakistan then again is the imbalance of power between the institutions. Unless the institutions themselves realize the fact that how it is affecting the current situation, the current stability within Pakistan, there is no way out. Nobody else will come and help you. Nobody can, there is no such aid which can give you that political acumen, which can give you that political awareness to realize the fact that the 21st century requires some different measures, some different commitments from the people, from the stakeholders themselves. So that's very important. As I have said, the first thing that needs to be curbed in order to win this war, as far as the sacrifice is concerned, we have done more than enough, including the security forces. But look at the civilian side. Look at the kind of sacrifice they have made. They were not part of the decision making. They have never remained a part of the decision-making process itself, and still they have to pay the price. And they are like in hundreds of thousands, So I think focus must be paid on those civilians who have sacrificed their lives for this country without, having a say in the process. So that is more important. I have so many times said this thing that we must change our national heroes. We must stop glorifying the gun. Unless we stop glorifying the gun, this process of sacrifice will never stop. This bloodshed will never stop. We have to do that. The state needs to realize it because that's what's more important. I'm not saying that the life loss of the security forces is somewhat less, but that is one way of doing things. We admire that. That's the problem, as we were talking about the socio-psychological problem of the country, because this is a societal disease, terrorism itself. So you have to take measures which are according to that, which are according to the cure which can be made. So that is important, that we should come up with an idea. We should stop. As a state, we should have a policy that we will not glorify the gun, no matter who carries the gun. That's the problem. It's at the end of the day, it's the gun which is being glorified. That's where the youth, 65% of Pakistan is below 25 years. So what are you giving them? What is the way forward for them? We eventually end up taking our anger out, or some way our dissatisfaction out through these means, through
That's a very good point, Sheraz. Let me take it up with Brigadier Saab. Sir, as we were talking earlier, the success that Pakistan has been able to achieve in curbing terror or reducing the number of deaths related to terrorism, the credit mostly goes to our military and security apparatus, which has worked tirelessly to make this situation a reality. Unfortunately, the other aspect, which is what Sheraz was talking about, the civilian aspect, has not been paid the kind of attention to that was required. Why do you think the reasons for that are? And then if there is some solution to that, how should we approach it?
The first issue is, because I like to say that glorification of the gun is normally embedded in every honorable country. If you go to United States of America, you see the Marines standing outside. You see their functions in their embassies. There are Marines there with their flags. And
well, they take it to another level. Let's not compare ourselves
you
to
see
the
bobbies. You see the bobbies marching outside the Queen's house and all that. So it's not a symbol of state power. It is a symbol of state pride. I take it that way. This is number one. As far as your question is concerned, I think why the military appears to be more prominent in counter-terrorism operations, as well as the Frontier Corps and the police, especially the police of KPK and the levies in the FATA areas. They are more prominent. The reason is that these are all disciplined organizations, and then the military has the ISPR, where the themes and everything are very well set, modulated and propagated. On the civilian side, it is not so. They try to make a hero out of the boy in Hangu who grappled with a suicide bomber, and his photograph now appears everywhere along with the Shoda of the armed forces and police. But no one remembers that in International Islamic University, Pervez Masih also did the same thing, a janitor. No one remembers that there were two young Christian boys, teenagers, who grappled with suicide bombers in Johanabad. Their names do not appear anywhere. The main reason is that our civilians, our civil society, our media, and even our state, they are not prepared to glorify individuals, because what they want is their own headlines, which glorify their particular political agendas and their parties. This is a tragedy, and this is where this entire thing that I was talking in my earlier is disjointed in the national election program. Synergy does not exist, and it goes to the credit of law enforcement agencies that they've been able to bring it down from 2nd to 5th. It could have been out of the top 10.
Yeah, very unfortunate situation, but let's move forward and talk about the role that education plays in dealing with the terrorism menace. And you are an academic yourself, Sheraz. So, what do you witness in your university and colleges when you interact with students? What is their mindset? Have you been able to gauge what their feelings are about the situation that they're confronted with, violence and so forth?
Well, I would say that the important thing is that you give, in social sciences especially, you give the students the opportunity to question, you give them the confidence to question everything. That is the only way you can keep them away from these kind of tentative, answers, which these terrorists usually end up, giving to them, because we try to snub controversial questions in our daily conversations, in our classrooms, in our offices, wherever possible. So that's important. That's what I see. So that is the opportunity which is given to the students, because earlier there was a visit from NECTA director and a couple of religious leaders from some religious schools.
The reason why I ask you this question is because there have been reports in the press regarding this new sort of form of terrorist. Earlier on the perception was that these people are, trained in madrasas, but now we've seen that people from very highly respected educational institutions, I won't name any of them, but the top universities of Pakistan have also produced terrorists.
That is because you don't confront their questions, you don't answer their questions, you don't give them the opportunity to express what is brewing inside. The questions inside you basically need to be answered at this age, especially the media is there, it gives you so many things to ponder on. So why are you not allowing that young man or young female to question you on these controversial issues? That is the one way. Give them the platform where they can question, because it is as mentioned earlier, state plays a very important, because state is directly linked to society. It is the responsibility of the state to define certain terms, the term of jihad for that matter. So education is obviously important, but it needs to be modeled, it needs to be modernized in the way that your society requires it. Otherwise, in Pakistan, unfortunately, if you look at the definition of sovereignty, it is different at every border. You don't have a standard definition of sovereignty even. So that is more important, in other words. So whilst the state is weak, I think the responsibility lies on the academic, the teachers, in other words. Obviously, media can also play a very important role. That is where we are lacking behind. That's what I was pointing out earlier, that we need to bring our focus towards the major part of the war, because military operations can give you a certain amount of success. Afterwards, the main thing is how to maintain that success. That has always been our problem, and that has been a problem for everybody.
Yes.
So gaining is easy.
Getting to the top
Maintaining-
is easy, but staying on top is what's difficult.
What's
And
difficult.
absolutely, there's no...
I'd like to add something to
Please,
this. In a way, I'm also associated with education. I've been lecturing and supervising at both graduate level in number of universities, interacted with students, been a student at university myself also. Ever since the semester system has come, the influence of the lecturer and the supervisor has increased. But unfortunately, most of them take a shortcut. They do not involve their students in critical thinking. Critical thinking has been curbed. You've heard of number of reports in Sindh recently, what's happening, especially there was some department of English and the girls were being harassed and all that. Whichever supervisor inculcates that process of critical thinking in students, his students invariably or her students invariably turn out to be much better and more creative, more alive to issues with a more balanced. I'll just give you an example without taking names. Two very prominent universities of Pakistan. One is known to produce educated religious extremists, and the other one is producing apologists for India. And when you analyze and have a look at them, you realize there's something very, very wrong with the faculties over there. So we have adopted the semester system. We have given so much powers to the teachers, lecturers and the supervisors, but somehow the system to streamline and have a feedback input on the performance of the faculty is not very well in place. And this is why many students, they
drift away
The
and all this.
system does not give the social respect that a faculty requires. Look at China. There was a study conducted, and one of the most progressive economies, and the study came out over there that the teachers have the most social respect in that society. South Korea is another example. Western societies are in front of you.
Right.
So that is where, if we want to, in the 21st century, then again, the internal cohesion itself is a very strong message externally.
Well, in many cases, the faculty have also been involved in brainwashing students into, joining terrorist organizations. So it's not just the faculty.
That's what I'm saying. It's the system. It's part of the system. And then again, there is a gray area. There is a gap between the state and the society. State and society are operating independently. State is more concerned about its own issues, the kind of issues we see, the kind of political lack of cohesion which we have seen. And society definitely will look for some answers, for some definitions, which are given to them in a very D-shaped manner.
Well,
and
what you're saying is very
what deserves.
important and food for thought for those who...
I'll just like to add,
power.
take Hillary Clinton, faculty of a university, Barack Obama, faculty of a university. Name statesmen from the United States of America. They're all academicians from universities. Even, come to Pakistan. How many academicians, PhDs, are involved by the government in the core governmental thinking?
I'm sure
are
there
they
are
members
many,
of
sir.
the parliamentary committees?
Even
co-opted
PhD is
members?
becoming a joke now. I think everybody is...
They are not respected. Even the government doesn't give them the due respect.
Let's move on to
Pure
our...
academicians are being undermined on the basis of, you can see there are many officers which are getting retirement and then easily acquiring a degree of PhD eventually. I think that will, I don't know where we are headed.
Well, nobody knows where anybody is headed, but let's talk about the media's role. When we talk about the number of terrorist attacks being reduced, do you think that the media has also played a role in trying to communicate the narrative of the state and the narrative which is against terrorism? Do you think they've done an adequate job and maybe have a little bit of a contribution in lowering Pakistan's ranking in the GTI, as they say?
You asking me?
Sure, sir.
I think it's been jerky. At times, yes. Most of the time, no. And then it also depends from channel to channel. Which channel has what policy, what they're doing. I think the most balanced has been Pakistan television in this respect. Others, I don't think they were in sync. They are more interested in making airwaves and breaking news. Sensationalism is the name of the game. And even this recent issue that we'll be discussing subsequently, 15 people being massacred in Baluchistan, it's just there for, no one is going to go into the root causes now, how this happened, why it happened. So it's a time being news as far as most of the media is concerned.
Let's move on to our next topic about the 15 bullet-riddled bodies found in Baluchistan's Kech district. One of the things that came out in the press was the ethnicity of those individuals. They were mostly Punjabis, and the news is that they were trying to cross over from the Iran border and onwards to their, going on to Europe. But they were moving in a very remote area where there weren't a lot of people there, and they were easy targets for these terrorists. Now that the terrorist attack took place and these people were brutally murdered, what's the next step? Now, how can the government really be effective in a place like the border areas of Pakistan and Iran in Balochistan? Do you think that the situation in Balochistan is conducive to having a sound security system in place?
It's important to understand the problem itself. Obviously, terrorism is the core problem at the moment. We are dealing with. On the other end, the problem of illegal trafficking. That is also very important, because I don't think so. It is as yet certain that what was the cause. Maybe the traffickers ended up doing what happened over there. That is one. But obviously, the kind of problem that is facing the whole of Pakistan, especially, I think it is important that Pakistani government then again try to bring about that institutional balance of power that will eventually lead to a balance between the provinces as well.
But what we've seen recently, the number of terrorist attacks in Balochistan has risen exponentially. Even today,
the role of India in that
there was even today an attack on a police officer, and his family was brutally killed. So these attacks are continuing on a very frequent basis in Balochistan, especially because even a few days ago there was a high-ranking police official who was gunned down. Now, these attacks are continuing in Balochistan, and they're targeting the security apparatus. How does the government deal with that situation, especially when we're talking about CPEC and when we're talking about Balochistan getting its fair share? How do we move forward, sir?
The problem in Balochistan is the sparse population and extended distances. So the entire territory cannot be policed. It's not possible. The border with Iran and Afghanistan is pervious. It cannot be patrolled. It's a very big border. And the law enforcement forces stationed there can never be enough. They cannot every nook and corner. So this is the second problem. The third problem is intervention of India. Fourth is other hostile agencies who are fanning the Baloch separatists in various forms and manifestations. This incident is also related to them. And the final one are the anti-Shia groups who enter Balochistan from Punjab, kill Shias and Hazaras, and then exfiltrate back into Punjab. And they are mostly in the Kacha areas of River Sindh in Punjab. So these are multiple problems, and they have to be resolved. Poverty is another core problem, because these were probably poor people who wanted to go abroad thinking there are greener pastures there, and they were ready to go. And over and above this, there are three things in Balochistan which are interlinked: gun running, narco traffic, and illegal people.
Human smuggling.
Human smuggling. The convoys are the same, because I have experience of having served in Balochistan and having operated against these forces physically. Very, very strong forces of gun runners with lots of weapons, big convoys. So it's not that these people just got killed. It was planned, as he said. It couldn't have happened. The convoy must have been more than 10 vehicles at least. And these people, they were ready to sit in some container or whatever inhuman conditions that are. And then at a certain point, they were stopped, they were segregated, identified, and then shot. And it's not the first time it's happened. It's happened near Mach, it's happened near Saryab with the Punjabi settlers, Urdu-speaking settlers in Balochistan. And these people are hardly a few hundred in Balochistan. They go into Iran, they go into Afghanistan, they get their mission, they come back, they choose their targets, carry out an operation which makes headlines, they make their presence felt, and then they extricate.
We even did a show about the funding that one of our senior army officers told us about, $500 million fund that the RAW has at its disposal for creating chaos in Pakistan.
Chaos in Pakistan.
Now, when we know that that is the situation, then what measures can we take in order to prevent these attacks from taking place?
I think political satisfaction of the people of Baluchistan is most important. Unfortunately, the parliamentarians who represent them in the provincial and the national assemblies and senate are not representing the aspirations of the people. Whatever budgetary or allocations are made to Baluchistan are more than the appropriation according to the NFC award because of the extended distances. But I personally feel it is still less. It should at least be doubled or tripled. But by the time it reaches to the lowest rung, all funding has evaporated. Poverty in Baluchistan is widespread. Recently we heard there was an earthquake in some area, Nokcha or somewhere. There was a rain there, Nokcha. I was quite surprised. I've been to Nokcha. Rain over there, probably it must have rained there after a century or something. 3 wells and a family living there around the well with a few cattle and everything. They know nothing about the outside world. This is the level of poverty. The government has failed to reach out. The Baluchistan is still divided between the British Baluchistan and the old Baluchistan. Baluchistan needs to be put into 2 administrative units. The British Baluchistan where the railway line goes and all the development, and the underdeveloped or non-developed Baluchistan, which is Kalat and Mand and Turbat and all these areas. They need a special development package. Gwadar is one of them, yes. But Gwadar has become more of a hype and less of a reality. The amount of hype that has been created for Gwadar is not congruent to the ground realities. And then,
well, it's still a work in progress, I would say.
Because it is sparsely populated, people feel threatened that outsiders are going to come and displace us. Something has to be done to satisfy the people of Baluchistan. Until that is not done, then the outside forces will always have a reason and a cause to lead them astray.
Well, let's move on to our third topic, sir, and that is quite interesting because yesterday we did a story about this news report that appeared about some terrorists re-entering into Pakistan under the guise of a peace committee and then spreading pamphlets and maybe even some declarations on the mosque's loudspeakers telling people to, not have any cultural activities and so on and so forth, basically trying to enforce their views on the population. That story was quite problematic for the rest of the country, but today we have a sort of what's the right word for me to use here, something that's come against that story. They say that few criminal-minded people who were representing the tribes or the will of Vana had held a meeting to ban social activities, but the members of the society over there did not let those people, carry their nefarious designs forward. Now, again, the situation is a bit complicated because we're seeing that, there are reports of people coming and trying to force their views, telling women to not leave their houses unless they're accompanied by a man, and, maybe not have cultural activities, no music or no dancing and so on and so forth, curbing people's, lives. That is not acceptable. So do you think that such stories serve the purpose? Because as far as journalism is concerned, we need to be objective and we should not spread sensationalism. So having seen the story where it came out and then a rebuttal that is not the situation as has been reported in the press, again, how important is the media's role in trying to get the facts to the people rather than just going on word of mouth or hearsay?
It's a very delicate job, in other words. But that can be a propaganda stunt, what happened in Wana. But it's the responsibility of the government to take media on board, go there, visit those areas, show those areas to the world, to the Pakistani community, and tell them that there is no such thing. Because we need to handle propaganda with the same tools. Otherwise, obviously, there is a kind of impression that why we have done so much and still we have to. So it puts a question mark on whatever you have done in the past number of years.
Absolutely, and it's so important because here we're talking about IDPs and TDPs, people who were displaced from their homes.
And our claims and our success story as well. It undermines everything, whether it is the case or not. So it's important for the government and the security apparatus as well to take a couple of renowned journalists along with them, their cameras, and let them see what is taking place over there. That is the only way we can say stop this propaganda or counter this propaganda, because that's what they are trying to do. Have to have a kind of fear in the society that they are not gone yet. So it's important. So one way of dealing with such a step is obviously to have the same kind of measures against such propaganda. Secondly, the most important thing is now we need to gradually structure that society and incorporate that society into the Pakistani mainstream. That has been the problem. We have always kept them as a separate entity. So we need to make them part of the Pakistani political system. That is most important, because if now we delay once again, I think it will be too late for us. So these measures need to be taken simultaneously at the same spot. We have to fight, we have to reconcile, we have to negotiate, we have to reconstruct, we have to do all these things. We have to fight the war of narratives as well. We have to deal with the grievances of the people as well. So this is the responsibility of the state. When I say state, I mean both the political and the military. Wherever one is lacking, the other must encourage. That is how we're gonna sustain ourselves in the 21st century, because single-handedly, even for that matter, United States of America cannot deal with the things taking place, the political and non-political issues. So within a country, how it's possible that unilaterally any institution can do it? So we have to encourage each other. We have one institution, if it is stronger, it has to take lead and help other where others are weak. So we need to work as a family rather than trying to dominate each other. We have to make sure that our national interest dominates.
That's a very, very valid and very good point that you've raised, Sheraz. This is a question that when we talk about our Pakistani identity, people are still split up in provincialism, in ethnicities, in linguistics. When and how can the state actually promote unity? That is a very key problem over here, and that was our Quaid-e-Azam's most important message to our nation: unity, faith, and discipline.
Yeah.
So when are we going to achieve the identity of a Pakistani
basically, nation? Creation of Pakistan was a psychosocial factor with a bit of economic also, because it was based on an ideology. The oneness that the ideology was supposed to bring, it didn't bring, and we saw it happening in 1971. So per se, we pay lip service to the unity of the country, but actually we do not do it at the government level, at any level. It is not done. After Pakistan has been created, unification becomes a socio-economic issue. The people of the country at all tiers, right from the lowest rung of a laborer and a cultivator, they have to be involved in a complementary socio-economic alliance where everything they do benefits everyone else. And because they are also the stakeholders, they also benefit. But alas, since 2002, Pakistan has hardly had an industrial policy. A good agriculture policy which Dr. Zafar Altaf late tried to put in place number of times. It was always corrupted and modified and changed. As a result, our agriculture has nosedived. Our manufacturing sector in the history of Pakistan in the past 2 years has gone into negative the first time. So this is what is connecting to the grassroots. The labor class and the cultivator class, the Kisan. The state is not connected to these people at any level. And till such time this does not happen, and because the people are not in a complementary alliance, psychologically they will get into a discord. And that is why we are talking of ethnicities, we talk of Sindhis, we
But
talk
what's
of
the
Mahajas
solution,
and
sir?
all.
We do understand the problem and the nature. It is a very complicated
The solution is good governance. Now, there is a proven economic theory. It's a theory, it's not a hypothesis. Good governance alone affects the GDP of a country by 2 to 3. So say if Pakistan's GDP today is 5 and we bring good governance, it goes to 7 or 8.
Right.
Just through good governance. And then you start doing other things, and the moment that happens, it will create a synergy, and people will not start, they'll stop thinking in terms of ethnicities and languages and religion and other things.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, sir, when you said good governance. Basically, it amounts to taking the bull by its horns and dealing with the problems that are confronted by society, and then not paying just lip service, because that has also been our problem, where we have wonderful laws on the books that are never implemented. So implementation, or the
question
there is
why.
between implementation.
The question is why there is no good governance, why the state apparatus is a failure. We need to look for the answer for that question, you know.
Right.
As I personally believe, I may be wrong, the good governance, we have to see, it's a very good theory, good governance, fine, fair enough, but it cannot exist in isolation. You have to see the history of a country as well, such as Pakistan. So in my opinion, I think we need to start from the beginning. And then again, I focus on the imbalance which exists in Pakistan, the institutional imbalance of power which exists in Pakistan, which hampers, create hurdles in every aspect of Pakistan's national life, you know,
Right.
from domestic to international.
Absolutely correct.
I'd like to add something to
Please.
Mana. See what happened in Mana. Take the army out from Swat today.
And you're
You
going to
think
leave a void for the militants
they
to
will
fill
come
in
back?
again. Yes.
The government has done nothing in FATA. As a social activist, as a civil society activist, who's been taking logistics to these areas throughout the IDP crisis and everything, I can vouch and say that the state is absent in the tribal areas of Pakistan.
Well, I hope that
And
situation is addressed and
it's
reversed.
only the law enforcement agencies which are handling, which are actually holding things together.
It's important because law enforcement agencies cannot be a political power at the same time. So if that's the case, if the political entity is weak, we need to take measures to strengthen that political entity instead of removing it and enhancing yourself representing yourself as a political entity.
We'll leave that at that. Thank you so much for taking out the time and sharing your
Thank
views
you.
with PTV
Thank you.
World. You heard the conversation, and in the end, as we'd like to say, please do draw your own conclusions and base your decisions on rationality rather than emotionality. With that hope and on that note, it's goodbye.